Excellent. You know what? We're going to go ahead and start this one with a little bit of music just to get the mood going. Welcome to another episode of Shiftless. I think this is officially episode 6. Is that correct, Brad? Don't know. I don't either. And you know what? We really don't know because we've got a lost episode that we haven't put out yet. That's kind of, I'm keeping that in the quiver in case we need to make up for a missed week or something like that somewhere down the road.
I think you've already published episode 6. And then we have an episode in the wings, and then so that would make this episode 8.
Well, we go by what's actually published, so that would make this 7.
There you go. Okay.
Sounds good to me. Well, I'm going with that at the moment. Or, hey, it'll be in the title when people look at it. But
right.
As always, I have my good friend, Chef Brad Green, joining us today. And no expert edition this time around. It's just going to be you and me chatting, talking about life and bicycles.
Just us amateurs.
I know, and we're really professional at being amateur, if you ask me.
Oh goodness, I'm actually enjoying this rain. I know in your line of work, you know, rain can be ominous, but we needed a little bit of rain. Not that we needed it to lush anything up because everything's so green. But I have to comment again, the spring has been just an absolute gift.
Oh, it's been a great spring, and I'm a fan of rain myself, to be honest with you. Particularly when things are super dry and dusty. Love to tamp it down a bit. Yeah. And on top of that, we don't have an event this weekend. So let it rain. Let it rain.
There you go.
So since you and I chatted last, what have you been up to?
Just riding my bike and climbing with my my oldest kid. We've been climbing 3 times a week. I'm trying to get in a routine of that just to break things up. I had a dinner on Saturday. We had a full house, 20 people. That was a lot of fun. Everything was really well received. And then I've got to go grocery shopping today. I have a yoga retreat this weekend up in Forestburg, good old Montague County.
Montague County. I love me some Montague County.
Speaking of which, Kevin, I've been meaning to mention this to you. I don't know if it's a good kickoff point, but I know that the owner of this ranch, it's around 200 acres. It's got a pond and stand-up paddle boards. It's got a yoga barn that would be like a great staging area. I know that she would be totally open to you staging a race out of that venue. And we can get together on that later, but I keep meaning to mention it to you, and I totally space it every time. But I'll talk to her about that this weekend if it's something you're interested in, and I'll send you the link when we get off of this so you can look at it and at least place it on the map and see if it's even, an option for you.
Yeah, pretty much anywhere in Montague County, and particularly right there around Forestburg, we can make work one way or another, but probably not for a really big event. But definitely let me see the details on it and see if we can noodle some ideas. That Forestburg area, if you go in the Wayback Machine, that's where Shannon and I did our first test rides, our first scouting trips for the very first Red River Riot way back when. That's back when I was wanting to call it Satanta's Grind or something like that. Because up there at the top of Die Mound Road, the highest point in Montague County, but I think the highest point in North Texas, that was what I was kind of shooting for for the roads to use. And we've gone out that way with several of our events where, like this past year, the Texas Chainring Massacre, the far west end of the long route went through there. Sometimes Red River Riot swings down there, but we've never based anything out of Forestburg proper. I would definitely be interested in looking into that because, sure, we can get 125-mile riders out there from Valley View, but we have a lot of 35 and 40-mile riders that never get to see those roads. So if there's a way we could introduce them to it. It's like the Regency Bridge Rumble. We used to always host that out of San Saba, but the short route riders weren't able to actually make it to the bridge from San Saba. It took like a minimum of 55 or 60 miles round trip to be able to get the bridge. Right. So we started moving it to Richland Springs, so that way all the routes make it to the bridge. So yeah, I'm definitely interested. So please do forward those details my way.
Okay.
Now,
and she does have a main cabin and 4 other cabins on the property. So
just generally speaking, what direction on the compass is it from Forestburg proper?
She's like maybe 2 or 3 miles. I mean, I'd have to look it up on my map. You know how directionally challenged I am.
No worries. No worries.
I want to say it's northwest of Forestburg proper, but like, where the Dollar General there is in Forestburg, it's maybe 3 miles from there. She's right down the street from Dry Creek Ranch, because I go over there and buy fresh yogurt and stuff when I'm there.
I think I know what area you're talking about.
I think it's off of, is it 1790?
Oh, you never ask me the paved roads. I have no idea what those are.
Hey, speaking of the Wayback Machine, I was going to ask you, do you remember one of the first rides we did? We staged from, I think it was Cracker Barrel there in Gainesville. And it was before, I think, Spinistry was even a thing. And we went out and rode gravel. And I think it was me, you, Shannon, Truman.
I'm pretty sure Truman was there.
And
maybe Koshin.
Andrew Heineman. We drug him along for a ride.
Okay, yeah.
And I think he was on a mountain bike, and we were all on gravel machines, and he was like, immediately was like, I got to get a gravel bike.
Yeah, I remember that ride. It wasn't prior to Spinistry, but it was definitely it was in the earliest days of Spinistry. And those roads became our holiday ramble route for the most part.
Yeah.
I do remember. I think if I remember correctly, I was riding panniers that trip.
Yeah.
Trying something out along those lines. And
that's a word I've never known how to say right.
Panniers.
Panniers. It's obviously a French word.
One would think so, yes.
Yeah.
It's one of those, monsieur.
It's one of those words I always see written. And I never, every time I go to say it, I'm always like, probably not right.
Just say bags.
So, yeah. Shadow bags.
Same as derailleur. Rear mech.
Speaking of, have you seen the new SRAM Axis with the UHD? Are you caught up on this tech?
The transmission, the SRAM transmission. Yes, I'm familiar with it. I'm fascinated by it, but I'm too broke to buy it.
I'm too broke to buy it as well. Yeah, I'm too broke to buy it as well, but I'm also just absolutely blown away by the technology and the durability and seemingly, at least at this point in my mind, how many problems they have solved in the grand scheme of things. Now, I still am a little iffy about the whole electronic thing, especially when it comes to, long distance, multi-day events and such. But, if you had a backup battery and you were charging it off of a hub, through a cache, through a flow through, I don't see it as a problem. But man, how durable, like I've watched videos of people jumping up and down on the derailleur. And this derailleur has, I don't know if it has a brain or what, but like if it takes an impact, it gets out of the way on its own and it comes back to the gear you were in. And that blows my mind, first of all. And then also, there's no limit screws on this derailleur. So you install it, it knows right where it is, and it's automatically calibrated. I'm sure there's more setup to it than that because it's all done through an app. But there's literally no limit screws. There's no high screw, no low screw. And that just blows my mind. And
That's no different than any of the electronic shifting, though. I don't believe. I think that they all essentially work that way.
no,
So
all the previous iterations have limit screws. You have to set up the high
do they?
screw
Okay,
and the
my
low
bad.
screw. Yeah.
My bad. I'm very interested as well, and I have not dug into the electronic stuff very deeply because hey, like, it's just outside of my budget. I don't want to get too enamored with it, but I am definitely SRAM transmission curious
Yeah.
at the
Well,
moment. I would love to take that for a spin and really try it out.
Well, make no mistake, the reason I'm super interested in it, I mean, besides the tech, but I'm always watching stuff like that because, like you said, it's cost prohibitive for me at this point. But I know that there's going to be a lot of trickle down. You know, it's going to go from the Axis down to the GX, and then eventually it'll be into the NX, and it'll be affordable for, you know, guys like me. You know, at the very beginning. It's just like
Yeah,
XTR for Shimano. You know, when Shimano comes out with something baller for XTR, you know next year it's going to be on XT, and then it'll make its way into the lower tier at some point too. But along those lines, I'm very interested to see how and if XTR or Shimano responds to what SRAM is doing. I mean, to say it's revolutionary is maybe a little hyperbolic, but man, to me, it seems really revolutionary. The leaps and bounds they've made on this, and the
I
pulley,
think
the lower pulley on the derailleur. This blows my mind too. You can stick something through the pulley, and the outer teeth still turn. Like, who thought of that? You know, give
yeah,
that guy a raise.
everything I'm seeing on it, I think it does qualify for revolutionary. Again, that's
No.
why I really want to try it out. The real
Hmm.
question that comes about from it, though, is how proprietary is UHD at that point? Is it something where anyone else is able to come up with a competitive product? It could be between the UHD and the patents on that transmission. There's no way for Shimano to answer that. SRAM may have it locked up. I don't know.
Well, they
So
call
once
it
you
the
know,
U
once
is universal.
for the derailleur hanger.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
the
that's a good question.
so
I don't know.
if if the patents for that transmission are specific to that UHD derailleur hanger alignment, it
Hmm.
could be the patent. And I am not a patent attorney, believe it or not. So we're just going with some of our spitballing here. But there is the possibility that it's proprietary.
That's maybe we should have a SRAM expert. Who can we find somebody that works at SRAM?
My guess is all of the major media outlets are trying their damnedest to find somebody at SRAM or Shimano or Campy.
Hmm.
What's the proper pronunciation of Campy? Their full words, getting into pronunciation. I'm definitely not.
Campanella.
It,
I've always
I
called it
don't think that's right.
Campanello, but I don't know.
I understand.
I'm sure my Italian's a little rusty, you know.
Yeah, but you've got more Italian experience than I do. I guarantee you that. Um, but the major media folks, I'm sure they're trying to get those official thoughts on that. And my guess is people like SRAM and Shimano are going to be very, very tight-lipped on those particulars
Yeah.
for a while. Would be my guess. We'll
Well,
see. We'll see.
I watched a video yesterday, and this guy has already logged 1,000 miles on that setup. He said he's had it for about 6 months. So I didn't even. I mean, I'm sure it's been in the pipeline for quite some time, but no, it's my understanding now. I'm still like trying to puzzle all this out, but that universal derailleur hanger, from what I understand, or clamps onto your frame itself, and then your through axle is actually what holds everything together. So there's nothing proprietary against your through axle bolting in. I don't know how they could keep people from utilizing that, but I'm sure there's a way. But I know Paragon Machine Works. Go ahead.
There's definitely ways they can. I mean, and that's so. I mean, that's the supposition out there from some right now. I'm not laying any claim to this or making any accusations myself, but the UHD format itself, is it UHD or UDH? Whatever. It's
UHD, I think. Or maybe it is UDH. That would make more sense. But I think I keep
derailleur
seeing
hanger.
That would make way more sense, yeah.
I'm not sure, but we know what we mean. The common concern is that format was basically a Trojan horse for the industry. Try to get all the bike manufacturers and frame manufacturers converted to that standard, and
a new standard.
Well, I mean, that's exactly what it was. I mean, this started in 2018 with the frames, and not all frames, but since 2018, more and more mountain bike frames in particular have gone that direction. Gravel frames were just starting to go that direction. The Trojan horse of it was, hey, now we don't have to have all these persnickety derailleur hangers. This universal one works for everybody. Isn't this great for the industry? So maybe the mount itself is not proprietary along those lines, or the derailleur hanger itself that goes on that frame mount is not proprietary. But you could definitely get a patent where a transmission or a gear shifting device for the rear wheel would be universal enough to fall under that patent umbrella where nobody else could do that if you so chose. So SRAM may have opted to not patent the derailleur hanger itself for the Trojan horse aspect of it. Hey, this is open. This is an open standard for the whole industry for derailleur hangers. Yeah. But anything else that doesn't attach to a traditional derailleur hanger may not be allowed for. That's the supposition as a maybe, but nobody knows for sure just yet.
A lot of technical jargon in there. I'm just going to go with you're probably right.
And then the next question is if it is truly proprietary for a gear shifting mechanism back there going forward, does that open up a can of worms where then to get around the patent does try to create their own universal derailleur hanger frame standard? That's been my biggest complaint about the bicycle industry for, definitely the last 10 to 12 years. But obviously it started earlier with Cannondale doing their crap way back in the early 2000s. But just the proprietary nature of everything drives me batty.
And all the quote unquote industry standards, the new standard bottom bracket, and then 3 years later there's a different standard, and then everybody's doing something different. It used to drive me crazy. That's one of the reasons I love single speed so much. Yep. And then, all the spacing changes, and then, you're in the same deal again. You've got Boost and you've got Super Boost, and you got Pivot doing their proprietary boosts, and it's frustrating. I could see how it's incredibly intimidating to newcomers as well.
So ridiculous. There was a beautiful 6-month period there where everything was rear spacing of 135 millimeter, everything was 700C or 29er, everything was quick release, and everything was 160 millimeter disc rotors. So it was like, at least for like 6 months, you could just buy a wheel set and put it on a bike. It was wonderful, and everything was 9-speed at the point. I don't even think 10-speed was around. Maybe 10-speed had just come in. So that lasted for like six months. And since then, I haven't been able to keep up with it myself. And quite frankly, I miss the days of just being able to, well, let's source a frame and go to all my buddies and find what their leftovers are and put together a cool bike.
Yeah.
That's impossible to do anymore.
Oh, and you've got to, I mean, you've got to almost be a research nerd to figure out what parts you need. You know, you didn't even talk about steer tubes changing, you know, tapered versus straight. And I mean, and then bar sizes. We were talking, Gage and I were talking about this, Monday when we went climbing. I dropped some sausage off to one of my buddies that's doing a crawfish boil. And, he was talking about he got a new bar and he didn't realize that he didn't have a right stem for it because it's a downhill bar. And he thought it was going to be 31/8 and it ended up being 35 millimeter. And Gage was like, what does all that mean? And so I was explaining it to him and I was like, you know, we used to be 25/4 and then it went 31/8 and now downhill bars are 35. And I'm like, you know, it's just crazy. Everything, they just keep changing. I said, the only thing that stayed the same is the size of grips. It's a little overwhelming.
It's completely overwhelming. I mean, I don't even try any longer. I just, if I need something, I take to the duck and say, fix it. Because I wouldn't even know what part to order at this point. You know?
Yeah.
So.
There is a lot to be said for having a great relationship with your local bike shop. I can't say that enough. You know?
I think it's the only way to go. And then, you know, that's one of those other things that there's so many people that, and I'm not knocking mail order bikes. I'm not knocking internet bikes. If you know what you're doing, that's a great direction to go. But actually, a lot of the people that are buying those internet bikes are the people that are new to it that don't know what they're doing. So they're like, "What's the best bike under $1,000?" And well, this can be shipped to you, and they don't even know. They don't even know what size to order. The website says this. Well, yeah, you might be 6'2", but your legs are only 30 inches long. You know, you're going to need a different fit than what that says.
Holy torso.
It's well, yeah, we're exaggerating to make a point here.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, I mean, like, I don't fit the typical. I mean, I choose not to. I mean, I'm 6'3" and have a 34-inch inseam, and I still ride a large bike just because I like a little bit more seat post. I come from a BMX background and stuff, and I want a bike, at least a mountain bike that's a lot more flickable. You know, it's got just a smaller geometry so I can muscle it around a little bit better. Like you're saying, you know, people that are doing mail order bikes, you know, not only if they don't get them assembled correctly or, you know, they could be, unbeknownst to them, like ruining their initial cycling experience, you know, effectively turning themselves off from cycling by stepping on their own foot, you know? So it's frustrating.
Oh, there's people that are definitely doing that because I'm not going to name any particular groups, but I mean, there's some generic Facebook groups out there that are semi-nationwide, for example, and you'll see the same person posting a post every other day of, well, I got a new handlebar to try to make it fit. I got a new saddle to try to make it fit. Well, I went ahead and got new cranks because I needed shorter cranks. And you know, people, did you actually get your bike fit? Did you?
Right.
And well, no, I'm not going to spend money to do that. Well, you just added another $1,000 to your $1,000 bike. And more than likely, it still doesn't fit you properly. So anyway, well, now you're getting me ranting, Brad. What's up with that?
Get off my lawn. It's so crazy that cycling can frustrate you, but at the same time, like we rode last night in the rain. Even second day I've ridden in the rain this week. Sunday we left out and in the, I guess it was mid-morning, and had a little bit of a drizzle and rode through a lot of wet foliage and ended up getting wetter. But the temperature was perfect. And last night we encountered rain about halfway through our ride. We actually rode some trail and checked out the new trail that we're cutting over at South Lakes Park in Denton, and ended up at East Side. And while we were at East Side, it started to rain, and we were like, did you bring your rain jacket? No. So we rode in the rain and the drizzle for about, I don't know, about 10 minutes, but it wasn't bad.
Some of the best rides I've ever had were in the rain. Now that wasn't the plan,
Right.
but and it was one of those things. Once we got into it, it's like, you know, this is an adventure. This is fun. This is different. This is a blast. I mean, outside of being hit by a car, I don't know that I've ever had a bad day on the bike, quite frankly. I mean, even when I've wadded up and hurt myself up into that point, I was still having a pretty good time. Well, I don't know. The last few miles of that DK we were talking about in that broiling sun and the 120% humidity, that was pretty miserable.
Yeah, that was a brutal day. I remember sitting in the loafing shed just to get some reprieve from the sun because there's no freaking trees in Kansas. And it was just at one point I got so hot I was like seeing stars and stuff. And I was like, man, this is not good. But
And that was
you know,
so weird coming from Texas because we're usually able to handle the heat so well, but
yeah,
that was another year where we had an amazing spring where it never got hot, so we weren't
hmm
even heat acclimated that year going into
yeah.
DK, which was weird.
And speaking of DK, I just have to share with you this magical moment. I'm sure every time you go on a big adventure like that, you have these like, you know, I don't know, just highlight of the trip or whatever. But the first year I did it were was when the storms came through. I think it was 2011, and then I went back in 2012. Um, it was 2011 was the year that it was so freaking hot.
Hmm.
And so I had pulled over on the side of the road, probably like mile 120, I'm guessing. And there was actually some trees on the side of the road, and there was a slight climb there. And I had pulled over, and I was just burnt, just had to take a break from the heat. And I'm sitting there gathering my thoughts and trying to figure out what the heck I'm going to do. And I start to hear water running. And I was like, what is going on? And I thought I was like, maybe not with the right frame of mind or whatever. And I'm like, keep listening and listening. Finally, I get up and I'm walking and I get closer and closer. And from under the road, there's this crystal clear water coming out of this pipe. And I was like, what is going on? So I reach down and I touch it and it's ice cold. And I'm sitting there for a minute and I'm thinking, you think this is drinkable? And I walk around to the other side to see if it's like a runoff, a drainage ditch or something. And there's nothing on the other side of the road. And I go back and like I said, my brain's still blowed up and I'm still trying to puzzle through this. And I look up on the fence that's right in front of me and there's a little stainless steel cup hooked to the fence. And so somebody apparently grabs their cup and drinks water out of there when they're tilling that field or whatever. So I fill up my water bottle and I take a sip and I spit it out and I'm like, man, this is delicious. So I drink this ice cold water and it basically refreshed me. I fill up my bottles and I carry on. So it was like this beautiful spot. So in 2012, so that year, I after the storms came and everything, I think we talked about this about I cut it off at like mile 136. We had just gone through like 5 miles of just shin deep mud and stuff. Well, in 2012, I went back and we were blessed with great weather. And I got to that same spot and I was like, I know where I am. I I found that same watering hole and filled up my water bottles again, and it was just as magical as it was the first time. It wasn't as big of a treat because I wasn't so blown up. I was arguably in better shape. And honestly, the weather was twice as good as it was the year before. But it was such a magical moment for me. And it's so funny to me because there was thousands of people that rode by there and didn't even realize, that there's a water source right there on the side of the road. I thought it was freaking cool. And no, I didn't filter it. And no, I didn't get sick. But I think it was a spring.
Yeah. It sounds like a spring. So that's Brad's spring for all intents and purposes at this point. And yeah, I mean, Trail Magic's one of those definitely very special things. And along the lines of Trail Magic, have you had any more discussions with Joey or anyone on the Colorado trip, or did we leave things off at our last get together and no more communication since then?
I have not, but I randomly ran into him at North Shore. We did a ride, not this past Sunday, but the Sunday before, and we were at North Shore at like mile 40 or something. And Red was with me, and we were at Mad Shelter. We were just about to do the east side, and Joey and can't remember his name. I'm horrible with names. I think his name's Bill. Long gray beard, older gentleman, strong as heck.
I know who you're talking.
And then there was another guy, Sean. I can't remember his name. Anyways, Red tried to flex on Joey, saying, "Yeah, we're only at mile 40," and Joey was like, "Oh yeah, we're at mile 68." They were doing a century, and they had just got through doing the east side, and they were on mountain bikes. We're on drop bar, Fargo, so drop bar mountain bikes, and Red just immediately went, "Oh, okay, well, y'all have a good day." It's so funny to me. But we didn't talk about Colorado Trail or anything.
Right. But you're still on board for it at least, right?
At the moment, yeah. I still got to keep stacking miles, and man, I'm trying to wrap my head around the whole thing, But I'm nervous, excited, anxious,
As well you should be.
Yeah. I think
That's the whole point.
A healthy amount of respect is tremendous. I know when we were getting ready to go do Triple Crown, I always try to talk to somebody that knows, kind of has already done the beta. And I was like, who do I know? Who do I know? And so I know Barry Bishop had tried it, attempted it, I want to say 5 times, and each time had multiple issues. I know he was dragging people with him and stuff, and the guy's doing it single speed, and he only weighs like $120. But anyways, he's impossible to get a hold of through social media and stuff. So finally, I just went to the shop, and I was like, "Hey Barry, I need to know, what the hardest parts are, or what I need to be aware of, or is there anything that any kind of information?" And he goes, "I know it looks easy on paper." He said, the biggest thing is don't underestimate it. And I was like, that's pretty sage advice right there. And so that stuck in my head the whole time, and I went out there fully anticipating us to have something major happen. And the 3 of us knocked it out. That was a big trip, but
for
I think
those
that's
who are
important.
listening that might not be familiar with what you mean, what is? Can you give the 30-second synopsis of what the Triple Crown is?
Yeah, it hits 3 major trails there in Arkansas that you basically circumnavigate Lake Ouachita. We started from Fishing Village and went North Womble onto Ouachita Trail, and then over to Lovett, and then finished on the return of the Womble. I believe that's how it went. 200 and I can't remember how many miles. But man, it was a big push. Ouachita Trail on a loaded bike is not fun. That's a hiking trail for all intents and purposes. And the North Womble even is very lightly traveled. When we went, it was just packed with pine straw. And so it was just super slow going. And there was a tree down probably, I don't know, every half mile that you had to literally dismount and go over. And it was straight out of the gate. You're just like, oh my gosh. And then you get to Watchdog Trail, and there's stuff that it's almost impossible just to push your bike up, much less walk unassisted, you know. But it was fun. It was a big push, but we ended up doing it in essentially 4 days. We did a half day on the first day and a half day on the last day, and then we had 3 full days. But it was third day before we ever averaged over 5 miles an hour, just to let you know how rough going it was.
Oh, that reminds me of something I would like your opinion on. We sent out a bike packing survey this past week, and some of the questions, I mean, I tried to keep the questions as simple as possible with, so people would just be able to click through and not get too wound up with it. One of the questions I asked about bike packing is people that were into bike packing, how many nights they when they went on a bike packing trip or a multi-day trip, how many nights they preferred to stay out. And the vast majority of responses was 2 nights.
I was going to guess that myself.
Okay, so here's from an organizer's perspective. I want to make sure, and I already know I'm going to probably need to ask a clarification question somewhere down the road from people. But in your opinion, when people say 2 nights, is that leave Saturday morning, camp Saturday night, camp Sunday night, and come back Monday, or is that get there Friday afternoon, camp Friday night, roll Saturday, camp Saturday night, and come back Sunday? How do you see 2 nights in that scenario?
I see. So I'm going to start by saying, Shannon and I have had this discussion multiple times, but it's just as easy to pack for multiple days as it is to pack for 1 day. So if you're going to pack all your stuff on your bike, you might as well do at least 2 nights. That's my thought process, because the build up for the trip and everything, it doesn't matter how many times you bike pack. You're still going to pack your bike, unpack your bike, and pack it again, because you want to make sure you've got everything. You want to make sure, and you're constantly culling your gear, like, well, shit, I carried this last time and didn't even use it, whatever it is. So, short story long, my thought process is always, if I'm going to go through the trouble of packing my bike, I want to do it. I want to camp for more than 1 day. I mean, yes, I'll go out, like leading up to a bigger trip, I'll go out and do a single night just to prove my gear, essentially. But in my opinion, your 2-night question is park, ride, camp, break camp in the morning, ride, camp, break camp, and return to where the vehicle is. Not pull up with your vehicle, car camp, and then pack all your stuff on your bike. Because to me, that's not really a bike packing camping night, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense to me, and my first impression, and it's why I phrased the question that way, is along I think the same way myself. But again, with my organizer's hat on, what I've run into in the past is whenever we've tried to structure trips like that or group rides like that, people always say, well, I got to be to work Monday. I want, can't we be done Sunday? So, and then, we've tried to do 3-day trips, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and it's still the same thing. So to me, it seems like conflicting information from the respondents, when our general feedback is people want to do everything in the course of a weekend, 2 days, but then they're also saying they want to camp 2 nights.
Well, I would offer something up for that. I would say like an easy solution, especially when we get into longer days before the temps heat up. It may not be feasible to do it this year, but a format that I would propose would be like, say, starting on a Friday, and maybe your first camp night is only 20 miles out. That way people at least get to pedal their bike, and you're close enough that if somebody goes, oh, shit, I forgot, blah, 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 they're not, 45 miles away from where they originated. I think a lot of the problem with especially new multi-day bike packers is they're scared to cut the cord on that first night. And so I think if you did a shorter jaunt the first night, longer day the second day, and then like a medium return, like say you were doing 100 miles total, just for even round numbers, 20 the first day and maybe like 45, 50 the second day, because you feasibly have sun up to sundown, to pedal, eat, sleep, ride, like they say, So do a longer day, the middle day, your Saturday day, and then Sunday, your return route, maybe it's 30 miles, I think that seems a little bit more doable, because if you were doing 20, 50, 30, it seems like a good, crack out 100 miles in a weekend, still get your 2 nights camping. You're still back at the car, say sun up is at 6:37, and even if you're only riding 10 miles an hour, maybe, 3 hours, 4 hours tops of riding on Sunday, you're still back at the vehicle, noonish, load all your stuff up, you're still home at a decent hour.
Bear with me a second. That reminded me of some other questions I wanted to ask, and I'm bringing up my survey, and it's making me verify this browser. You can have 2 verified devices saved to your account at a time. So I have to remove one of them, which is the same device, but it was from a different... I'm going to remove this one. Remove device. So 124 responses to the 2023 Spinistry Bikepacking survey, and that's a pretty good response rate, I think.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so analyze results. I think this would actually be a good discussion point. And I do plan to do a Spinistry chat video where we seriously break it down. But I like the idea of getting your feedback and thoughts on this. Okay, so question 1.
Mm-hmm.
How likely are you to go bikepacking between now and the end of the year? And the options are very likely, somewhat likely, unlikely, and not a chance.
100%.
I'm going to guess that yours is very yeah. You're in that very likely category.
I'm like a caged tiger right now.
I'm going to give you the chance. Roar. I'm going to give you the opportunity to guess the respondents' percentages on this. So we'll start at the top. What's your guess at what percentage of respondents chose very likely?
Like 20%.
50.81%.
Would have lost a lot of money on that.
How many chose somewhat likely?
I'm going to guess 30%.
You're closer, 41.94%.
That's promising. I like that.
Unlikely.
Those answers make me very happy.
Yeah. You're going down the same path as I am on this. Unlikely was only 6.45%. Not a chance. There was another one that was, I actually deleted their response because all of their responses were obviously so bogus, and this one may be as well. This one wasn't here yesterday, so I'll check this person's. I'm assuming it's a guy, because usually those trolls are guys. What's super promising to me along those lines is we're basically at 93% of these people are either very likely or somewhat likely to go bikepacking before the end of the year. That is a huge shift from similar surveys we've done in the past. But it is also the reason
just by the nature of the survey, you're basically calling out people that aren't interested in bikepacking, though. I mean, if you have no interest in bikepacking, you're not going to fill out that survey. So, you know,
Understood. But that's my point. We've done similar surveys in the past to basically the same target audience, people that are interested in bike packing,
hmm
and the very likely was much lower, closer to your 20%, and
hmm
the unlikely was considerably higher. The somewhat likely was probably in that same 40-ish% range. So that's a big shift there. But it was, like I said, that was also part of the reason I was issuing this survey, because it seems that bikepacking is finally approaching that critical mass area. I mean, it's never going to be the most popular form of cycling by any stretch of the imagination,
No.
but we're getting to the point where people are actively doing it as opposed to sitting on the sidelines and waiting to see what everyone else does.
And I'm
The
so far removed. I'm so far removed from like the progression of a cycling experience, if that's the right way to say it. So I'm in my mind, I think, you know, if I'm a newbie and just getting into cycling, like like say January of 2023, I got my first bike and I think, man, I want to start riding. I want to start clicking some stuff off. You know, what year range do you think it is before someone that's inevitably going to bike pack? Do you think anybody bike packs within their first year of getting into cycling? Or is it like like a third year thing? I don't know how to phrase that correctly, but in my
no,
mind at least, nobody just jumps into cycling and jumps into bike packing. I think it comes from a longer tenure of cycling.
I know exactly what you mean, and
hmm
there's definitely a parallel on the bike packing to the evolution and the progression of the gravel participation scene as well,
hmm
and we've talked about it before. When gravel was getting popular, it was existing cyclists from other disciplines that started migrating towards gravel. And that was basically 2015 to 2020.
hmm
When gravel got super popular, it was because a lot of road and triathlon people were moving into gravel. Mountain bike
hmm
people were kind of somewhat on the front end of it, but more mountain bikers were coming to it as well. Then from 2020 on, the dynamic shifted to where it was people that were coming into cycling new with the intent of starting out riding gravel for
hmm
various reasons. The main one, in my opinion, is just the cultural awareness of it. Call it the fadness of it if you want to,
hmm
where prior to 2020, only people that were already into cycling even knew gravel was a thing. After 2020, gravel riding itself, kind of the general population is often aware of it to some extent or another. We don't have nearly the number of people surprised when we show up in the middle of nowhere, Texas, and have
hmm
20 or 30 people show up for a gravel ride on roads that maybe see 2 cars a day. People
Yeah,
aren't surprised by that anymore.
that's a good thing.
Bikepacking itself has kind of gone almost to that, not to that level, but it's starting to get to that same progression. There are people that are starting out with the intent of multi-day bikepacking being in their near future. Now, a lot of
Mm.
them, it's kind of like when the triathlon people started migrating towards gravel. What you're getting are a lot of existing outdoors people, backpackers,
hmm
multi-day backcountry trail hikers and stuff like that. They're starting to like the idea of bike packing because maybe they're covering 7 or 8 miles a day on foot, and they're realizing I can cover 70 or 80 miles a day on a
hmm
bike and see so much more, sort of thing.
hmm
That's starting to happen. It's not a huge influx yet, but it is a noticeable influx. A lot of those newer from 2020 on gravel riders they came on to gravel, they came on to cycling with that gravel intent, and bike packing was already just part of the everyday conversation around it. So those people weren't caught off guard with the bike packing's a thing. They just kind of assumed it was part of the normal culture of cycling already. So they saw it as a natural progression. Once I get comfortable on my gravel bike, I'll start throwing bags on it and do some overnight trips. So I think those are the two big shifts along those lines that may have finally gotten us to where we're close to that critical mass on the bike packing side of things. So there's my soliloquy there. So tell us about your clip that I walked all over.
No, you're good. You're good. I thought you were at a stopping point. I didn't mean to jump in. But I watched this clip. There's a YouTube channel that I watch a fair amount of their videos. But it's called Path Less Pedaled. And the guy is kind of a proponent of underbiking, if you will. And he's kind of like a randonneer, I don't know, retro kind of guy. You know, he's into less tech, less suspension, rim brakes, 3-speed transmissions. It's as far down the rabbit hole as you can go. He entertains, alt bars and all this stuff. But he was at Sea Otter, and it's only like a 9-minute clip, but he was interviewing a bunch of industry people, at their tents and only asking them 2 questions. And I think the first question was, what would you like to see more of in cycling? And the second question is, what do you see not going away in cycling? And I may be messing up the phrasing of it. And the first question that he asked, he had a bunch of random answers across the board. And I thought it was very refreshing that the second question he asked, what do you see not going away in cycling? Almost unanimously of everybody he asked, everybody responded gravel. And I thought that would make you really happy to know that. But the funny thing to me was, and it seemed almost like people were alluding to something, but it was at least 3 people, I believe, that said, we may not call it gravel anymore, but the heart and the spirit is still going to be the same. But there seems to be this, road riding is declining steadily just because of the nature and the danger and, the exposure. And another, just, you don't get to see as much, you get to see all this overdeveloped nonsense and, riding this, I don't know, but and gravel is just steadily inclining, so I think it's a good thing. And I totally agree. I don't think gravel's going anywhere. And I think people are gravitating towards it for various reasons, whether it's the scenery, the lack of traffic, the safety, the remoteness, the just getting away, whatever it is. But I totally think gravel's here to stay.
I agree completely. And I'm not saying that from a self-serving perspective. The reality of it is, I think we're at an evolutionary juncture for gravel / adventure riding. I'm assuming that's what they were getting at when they were saying, well, we may not be calling it gravel in the future or whatever.
Right.
It's adventure riding. And I've kind of been leaning towards that myself for a couple of years now.
Sure.
Because, and that also goes to the, a common topic of discussion for us is the gravel roads that go away and get paved. Well, you can still use some of those roads to piece them together, but is it appropriate to call it a gravel grinder when 30% of the roads are gravel, sort of thing? Yeah. Call it an adventure ride. We're covering all the bases.
Call it a ramble.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Holiday ramble. So
Yeah.
we've been calling them rambles for 10 years now. And you got your weekly ramble. What's not going away is gravel. What did they say they wanted to, or what were some of the things they wanted to see change or expected to see change? What was the other question?
What is something you'd like to see more of in cycling? And
More of.
the answers were across the board. The one that I was happy about, and I think we're actually going to start see, I think we've already started seeing is more tire clearance on bikes, especially in that gravel sector. I think, even on road bikes, nobody runs 18s anymore.
Right.
2025 it seems to be like the standard unless you're in a like pro peloton, with a service car riding behind you. Most guys are riding 25s and they're riding a dished wheel where they can hide the tire behind the wheel. From an aerodynamic and comfort standpoint, it just makes more sense. And I think in gravel, people started out, initially by converting cross bikes into, a gravel bike, which, typically only had clearance for like a 38, maybe hopefully a 40. And I think now that you have a bunch of people creating quote unquote gravel specific bikes, people are getting a bigger taste for larger tires. Whereas a 50 is a decent sized tire now, and people are running all the way up to like 2.0s or 1.8s and I don't know where the crossover is. I'm not familiar with the numbers on where a 50 becomes a 1 point whatever it is, but I think you're starting to see a lot bigger tire clearance on even some of the more serious go fast bikes, if you will.
At Sea Otter, Panaracer released a 55 millimeter Panaracer Gravel King SK, which that's basically a 2.1. So your 50 millimeters a 1.9, 55 is a 2.1. The standard the last couple years really got to that 45 to 47 range. I've always said the perfect tire, all around tire is the 1.9 to 2.1. That's
Yeah.
that, but that's from the adventure riding perspective of, hey, if I get a chance to throw some single track in the mix, I'm going to, sort of thing. I don't think there's a downside basically to a 2-inch tire for most, particularly multi-day stuff. It's just the comfort level of it and just the sure-footedness of it. Just that makes a tremendous difference. So I hope, and what the Loft Segel is out there or whatever they call it. The Canyon has the Grizzle. I think all of those take close to a 2-inch tire now, but they're not like, they're not the Cutthroat. They're not the Fargo format.
Right.
I think we're getting close to finding Kevin's ideal day bike. That's gonna, it's kind of in between that Fargo Cuddy, but not, not as aggressive as a gravel bike. Where you can do flat bar or drop bar, either one, without having to completely hijack to a crazy configuration of some sort. We'll see. Looking forward to see where that goes. But I think 2-inch tire is going to shortly become routine, if not the standard.
Well, I'm a completely. Oh, God, sorry. I'm a Fargo.
You're completely
fanatic.
What? Besides gorgeous.
Whatever. I'm a Fargo just fanatic. I firmly believe that my Fargo is one of my favorite bikes I've ever owned. And that's the thing I love about it is you can put 3.0s on there if you want, I mean, it'll take 3.0 front and rear. And I routinely run around. I mean, it's set up with 2.6 front and 2.35 on the rear right now. And that's like when I did Triple Crown, that's what I ran on there, which is more of a mountain bike setup. But when we did Arkansas High Country, I put 2.2s front and rear. And, you know, I'm a Mezcal fan. I like the Mezcal tires. But, and that's a great running around tire for gravel, multi-day gravel, not for a gravel race,
Oh
obviously.
yeah.
But it's just all day comfort, you know. But I like that 2.6 up front for single track because, you know, rigid fork, you have a little bit more suspension. And then once you get that bike loaded down with, you know, 40 pounds of stuff or 30 pounds of stuff, that bike rides so much better. I mean, it honestly rides better, climbs better, descends better. It's just it never have I had a bike that said I was built for this, you know, and that thing just shines so well.
What's your gearing setup on your Fargo these days?
I've got a 34 oval 12-speed transmission out back. I run a Brifter, standard Brifter that's been converted to a 12-speed. And then I want to say it's 1150, whatever SRAM does. I can't remember. SRAM and XTR have like one tooth different. It's either 51 or 52 or whatever.
Something like that.
So,
Something like that. Again,
yeah.
I can't keep up with them
Yeah.
all. But you're right.
But
You're running a 34 single up front oval.
hmm
Okay. Let's and yeah, we got two more questions. One which is multi-choice, and one which was an open one.
hmm
Let me make sure that I did. Oh no, actually, we missed a question. Which months of the year are you most likely to go bike packing? Guess which one is the most popular month of the year.
October.
Yep, that is the
Damn, I'm
one.
good.
You're awesome. By a very wide margin. I mean, obviously, this is going to be a Texas centric crowd,
Sure. hmm
but 84.55% of the respondents picked they could pick multiple months, but almost everybody picked October as a primo month. No other month even got above. I'm sorry, November actually got 63%. That surprises me a little bit, but I like November.
November
April
can be iffy though,
was
you know.
it can be extremely iffy. Well,
hmm
yeah, October can be iffy too, though. October can be iffy
Sure.
on the hot side.
Yeah.
April at just under 60%. So April, October, November, and thankfully we have the
So
Rat
I have
1000 in
a
October that will fill that niche for anyone looking for it.
I have a dumb percentage question. How can 80% of
Sure.
the people vote for October and 60% of the people vote for November and 60% of the people vote for April? I'm getting
They can
like
they can
160%.
select all that apply.
Ah,
So
copy.
you can select multiple months that you like to go bike packing.
Heard that. Okay.
But 85% of the respondents chose October as one of their months.
Okay. Now I'm with you. Sorry.
All good. And then the next question is, how many hours of riding do you try for on bike packing trips? 4 hours a day or less? Under 8 hours, but more than 4 hours? More than 8 hours a day, or other? What do you think was the
Four,
biggest response?
4 to 8.
Exactly correct. 71.77%
Mm-hmm.
were in that range. So I'm going to build my stuff around 6 hour days, generally speaking, is my plan.
Mm-hmm.
And that should cover the vast majority of people. About 12% aimed really high for 12%
Mm-hmm.
or more, or for 8 hours a day or more. And
Mm-hmm.
then 6.5% said other. Let me see what some of those folks said. Haven't tried it yet, but it's on my list to be determined. Never done it for. And okay, so the others don't apply.
Yeah.
They
Irrelevant.
didn't read the question. They were.
Yeah. I'm in the same boat. Like much like my thought process on once you pack your bike, you might as well do it for more than one day. I'm on the same boat. Like once you get on your bike and you start riding and you're headed somewhere, you might as well ride for at least 4 hours, unless it's like I painted that scenario earlier where it's your initial day and you're only going to ride, 25 miles to your first stop. For the most part, I want to have lunch somewhere, whether it's sitting down on the top of a mountain or on a overpass or whatever it is, and having a sandwich and then having dinner at camp, and then waking up the next morning having coffee around the campfire. And, I want the full experience. And so to me, I'm in that. I would be even more into the 6 to 10 hour range. But, but we're talking about are you talking about absolute ride time? Like I'm pedaling for 4 hours, or are you talking about like total time from start to finish, So, because there's always water filtration or sitting and snacking or, route finding or whatever, there's always downtime. So.
Sure. And I mean, I didn't get that specific, but the general flavor I was shooting for was total ride experience time.
Yeah.
Not including formal breaks. Like, so let's say you get to somewhere to eat lunch and, hang out by a lake for an hour. I don't consider that part of the ride time, but if you get lost at a crossroads or whatever, or, have a mechanical, that's still part of the ride time. Generally speaking, is kind of the way I look at it. And I'm an 8 to 10 hour ride time guy myself, generally speaking, when I do stuff like that, because I'm slower than everybody, so I need the extra time to get to the same finish spot as everyone else. But I mean, I'm not. I like to get to where we are, set up camp, and minimize dipshittery and go to bed. Be honest with you, sort of thing. Unless there's some really good dipshittery going on, then my arm can be twisted.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I want to. I don't want to set up camp at night personally.
No, not at night.
Yeah,
but in the last hour of day, I'm fine with.
Yeah, in that twilight hour, I'm good with. And like we've discussed before, sleep is a precious commodity to me. So I'm not one of these guys. Once again, I'm not going to set up camp to just sleep for 4 hours. I need at least 6 to 7 hours of sleep, even on a multi-day event. I mean, 8 hours is preferred, but. And I want the full experience. Like I said, I want to wake up in the morning. I don't want to wake up and just throw all my crap on a bike and take off riding and eat a bar, and suck it down with some water. I want to wake up and make some coffee and have some hot oatmeal and break camp and, carry on. That's part of the experience for me, and that's kind of why I'm not in the mindset of racing that format, because it to me it conflicts with the experience that I'm seeking, but that being said, I still want to do Race Across Texas, or at least the route. I don't necessarily want to race it.
That's the ride across Texas that you want to do. It's still the Rat 1000. It's the ride across Texas, which
Speaking
was really
the way
I designed it to begin with. He kicked ass on the west to east route this week. That's his 6th full rat, I think. He's definitely got more rat saddle time than anyone, and he didn't do it in the racing format. That's but there's times he had to go deep into the night, I believe. But that is one thing I will say. I mean, when I first laid out the rat, I didn't have expectations of people riding through the night. But I was laying it out from my perspective, kind of like what you're talking about. Well, if
Yeah.
I were to do this, 125 miles a day would be plenty. And then it's, I'm still able to finish in the daylight and set up camp, sort of thing. And so
Yeah.
when I built the route, it's like, hey, let's find this, let's find whatever cool sites we can along the way to throw them into the mix. And then I find out there's people they're just, it's like, hey, I'm gonna ride my bike for 4.5 days straight without sleeping. And then there's other people that are, well, it's too hot, so I'm going to ride through the night and sleep during the day. And none of them are seeing any of the sites I put on this route, And
Yeah.
to me, that's a little frustrating, but I get it. They're having their own experience, and
Sure.
that's perfectly cool.
My ultimate plan when I finally do the ride across Texas is I want to camp it every night. I want it to be like a true bike packing, course. And to my knowledge, I don't think anybody's done that yet, where they've camped exclusively every night.
I think
like,
you could be right with that one. There's been plenty of people that have said that's their intent. Then they get 3 days into it, and it's like, that's a nice looking motel right there.
and I'm not saying I wouldn't fall guilty to the same thing, but I would want a dirt bag it the whole way. That's my ambition.
I think that's a worthwhile ambition, and maybe this kind of leads us to our final question from the survey. And I am definitely curious on how you would answer this yourself as Brad Green. Open question: how could we, Spinistry, be most helpful for your bike packing adventures?
And it's an open answer.
Yep.
Provide loaner bags or portage equipment.
Okay.
That
We do
would
both
be
of those. Actually, I'm meeting Mr. Falk with some loaner bags this evening, as a matter of fact.
very cool. I'm curious to know what he's out and about to do.
I don't know the details myself, but I think he posted on your Ramble page. Maybe it was TNSS. He posted somewhere that he was looking for some bags, and so we're meeting up tonight, and I'm going to hand some bags off to him. All right. Well, we are an hour and 17 minutes and 25 seconds into this one. I think that's a pretty good show for today. Oh, wait a minute. You said you had some ideas for some guests. Let's hear your ideas before we let go here.
I would, I wasn't even thinking about it when we were first talking, but if we could try to get somebody with Sram that could talk, not tight-lipped, I'm sure they're going to be reserved, but I'd just love to know, how long it took them to develop this transmission and what the trickle down is going to look like and stuff like that. But my initial thought when I mentioned that would be, I would love to talk to somebody that's done Tour Divide.
Okay.
Great great. I've got questions that I don't think have been answered, and I would love to talk to someone that maybe we know somebody personally that we could talk to that would be a good interview. I don't have anybody specific in mind, but.
You don't have anyone specific? Don't we know several people that have pulled that off?
Yeah.
I'm working on that. Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
We'll look for a worthy Tour Divide guest. I have somebody in mind for that, but I want to make sure that I'm not excluding somebody else that might be a good fit before I reach out to the first person that comes to mind here. So definitely we'll play with that. And anything else before we roll out for the day?
I don't think so. We need to get together and ride, though.
No, that brings it. Did you get your pedals yet?
No, not yet.
Did you order them yet?
Not yet.
Mine are here.
Take one out and spin the spindle. I wonder how buttery smooth they are out of the box. Probably a little break in necessary, but
Very
still, that's
smooth.
pretty
They need
freaking
some. They
smooth.
need very smooth, but it needs some
Yeah.
break in. You can
Yeah.
tell. So, but
All
yeah,
right.
I opted to not do the gray because I didn't want us to be matchy matchy on the smart bike. I actually had some flip flop flats, Crank Brother. I can't even remember what model that is. So I lowered the saddle on that, and I'm going to try that with the midfoot position on the smart bike for the next few rides. See how that feels before I start dicking with the bike itself and making adjustments there. I'll be honest with you. I'm slightly concerned that with my knee issues after being run over, that the adjustments may be problematic for me. So I want, but it could go the other way. They could be tremendously helpful for me. So I want to try it on the smart bike first and see if I notice how it may affect my knees or not affect, or before I start messing with bike fit and stuff like that on the real bikes, and take it from there. That's kind of what I'm looking at first. I'm
I'm excited.
gonna hit the music, and we're gonna roll out of here. Okay.
All right. Have a great day, brother.
You too. Good chatting with you again, as always.
Always a pleasure.